Our next poet is Ayesha Chatterjee. Ayesha was born and raised in Kolkata, India. She has lived in England, the US, and Germany. And now she lives in Toronto, happily for us. And her poetry has appeared in numerous online and print magazines, and including The Guardian, Magma, Autumn Sky Poetry, and The New Writer. And her first collection, The Clarity of Distance, is the bright red book over there on the table, and it came out in 2011 with Bayeux Arts, and I hope we'll hear more about that soon. Please welcome Ayesha Chatterjee.
Hi, thank you so much for coming out today. This is my first real Canadian winter. I used to wonder why people would go on about it so much. It's my fourth one. And it was always warmer here than it was in Germany, and I never quite got it. I do now. I'm not the most decisive of people, and it took me quite a while to settle on a poem to read. And I chose To a Mouse, and I'll tell you why later. I practiced really hard, but I'm going to apologize in advance for massacring the Scots accent. To a Mouse, on turning her up in her nest with the plough, November 1785. Wee slicked cowrin timorous beastie, oh what a panic's in thy breastie. Thou need not start away so hasty with bickering brattle. I would be laith to rin and chase thee with murdering paddle. I'm truly sorry man's dominion has broken nature's social union, and justifies that ill opinion which makes thee startle at me, thy poor earth-born companion and fellow mortal. I'll doubt no wiles, but thou may thieve. What then? Poor beastie, thou maun live. A dame a nicker and a thrave, it's a small request. I'll get a blessing with the lave and never missed. Thy wee bit housey too in ruin, its silly walls the winds a strewing, and nothing now to beg a new inn of foggage green, and bleak December's winds ensuing, baith snell and keen. Thou saw the fields laid bare and waste, and weary winter coming fast, and cosy here beneath the blast thou thought to dwell, till crash the cruel coulter passed out through thy cell. That wee bit heap o' leaves and stibble has cost thee mony a weary nibble. Now thou's turned out for all thy trouble, but how's so hold? To thole the winter's sleety dribble, and crenroch cold. But Mousie, thou art not thy lane, in proving foresight may be vain. The best laid schemes of mice and men ganged off a glee, and leave us naught but grief and pain for promised joy. Still thou art blessed compared with me, the present only touches thee, but I backward cast my eye on prospects drear, and forward, though I cannot see, I guess, and fear. The reason why I chose it was I felt like I needed to write a poem in response, and I couldn't figure out which one I would write a response to. And then it struck me, we used to have a cat. This big black cat, and his name was Humphrey. He was just a magnificent cat, and I'd kind of forgotten. I'd forget every time I went off on a trip how dark he was until I came back, and there was this big cat-shaped black hole moving through the apartment. And we loved him to bits, but he got cancer when he was about 9 years old, and that was really hard to deal with. And I felt like I needed to put it down on paper, and I couldn't do it because I was too close to it. And strangely enough, reading To a Mouse helped me to do that. One of the things that was really difficult for me, I think, was once we found out that he had cancer, not being able to tell him what was happening and what was going to happen. But knowing it was. Anyway, so that's the background to this. To a cat. I could have called you anything. You were Cassandra's cat, silently obliterating the present as you moved. This was cherrywood. This was marble. This was the end of the world, and it was apple green. When the windows bubbled, you shrank the universe further with your rasping breath, until the wind stopped. You made me mute, and didn't understand the tears I cried for a future only I could see, that you didn't care about. So I figured I'd stay with time, and so the next one is called past tense. If you picked a day and asked me to remember, I would say yellow. I would say bear. Also, magnolia petals in disapproval swept into the brown bin. I have no sense of smell, except in dreams, so I could not truthfully tell you those. Every image is straightened, then shuffled like a pack of cards, but one keeps turning up. A one-eyed jack, a princess. That empty yellow swing in a Scotch mist. I don't know if anybody remembers, but a couple of years ago there was a news story about scientists discovering that in the ice ages there used to be lions in Siberia, and I just thought that was just an amazing thing. It's like an impossibility these days, and I just felt like I had to write about this. So this is it. Last night, the moon rose from a pool of blue, new and full and dripping April. The radio crackled messages of mammoths peeled from snow, of lions in Siberia, and a needle-pointed lilac tower pulsed the future. A scent of history hung about the air. Everything seemed older than the bubbling tangerine womb hardening in the sky. So, I grew up in India, in Calcutta, and my parents are still there now. And they used to live in this big old house in the middle of the city with a really big garden, which they sold a few years ago. But my mum had this ritual that she had every afternoon, where she would go into her garden and feed what felt to me must have been the city's entire population of pigeons. So at a certain point of time in the afternoon, these pigeons, of course, knew when feeding time was, and so there'd be this sort of cloud of feathers that would descend upon the rooftops and the branches of the trees, and waiting for my mother to spill the grain. And so this is about that ritual. 3:30. The wings angle the sun until the light beats sharply. Sometimes, in the rains, when the days are dark and mouldy, the feathered sound pushes like Morse code on a door. I'm here, listen. The half-hour arcs in a sudden, gorgeous gold rush, breathlessly in 1,000,000 grains, 100 million grains. An irreverence of grey drowns out the jostled road beyond the walls. And then the silence. A stirring in the shadows that could be a palm leaf or a bat or a torn kite. So I thought we'd stay with warm countries, and the next poem is written about West Bengal's official state flower, which is, in English I think it's called the night jasmine, and in Bengali it's called the shiuli. And it blossoms at dusk and sort of withers by dawn, and it's used very often as an offering in prayer or as a garland and so on. So, and it's a little white flower with an orange center. In the space of a lifetime. The stars smell like jasmine tonight, rich and thick with promise. The night is all existence, and the sky its flickering heart. If time and space had purpose, it would be easy to believe that these thin rays of ancient light from stars spun long since by were destined to end exactly now, exactly here, on these frail, moon-bladed flowers that at dawn, bursting with adder of the past, will pinwheel into carpetfuls of prayer. And I've got one more. So I'd like to end with a really short poem. It's called Physics. I can identify emptiness by the sound of the piece that isn't there, that infinitesimal hesitation before the box rattles. It's like the thought of breath. Nothing really. Just a lightness of melody that beams make in a rain stick. The way that wet earth smells of home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another round of